Thank you so much to Roxanne and the St. Michael's College Continuing Education Department. We're very excited to jump into this conversation. Apologies to start with a silly pun, but we hope you enjoy it. I'm so excited to be here and to chat with Haesun, Dr. Moon, about her work, which is honestly incredible. As mentioned, she's the author of Coaching A to Z, which is getting blurred out for some reason by Zoom. It's an excellent book and an incredibly thought-provoking piece of work, which has really shifted my thinking about the power of conversation and how we frame things in our mind. And I think that today we really want to live up to the title of this webinar, which is about finding hope through better conversations. But the question that comes up for me as I think about that topic is, as many of you may have noticed, there's a lot going on in the world right now. Things are, pretty bleak across a lot of areas. There is, I often refer to it as a polycrisis taking place right now in politics, in climate change, in the environment, in tech, and how it's affecting a lot of our lives. I could go on, but I won't. This is about hope, not sadness. But I wanted to start by asking you, Hasten. In what way do you believe that better conversations can actually lead to a more hopeful future? How can conversation help us to shift things in our lives and maybe in the world?
Well, I work as a communication scientist, and usually my nephew who's 16, he's like, so what does it even mean? Or what do you really do? Right? So what I do is I do research. Like many of you might be interested in like doing research of some sort. And some of you might be like, I'm not a researcher, but surprisingly, actually, all of us are. So researcher is somebody who finds something that they want to know more about. The reason being it something bothers them or
Mm,
something is so exciting, something is interesting, I want to know more about it. And I think that human curiosity is what drives all of us to be possibly a researcher. And I was just re-looking at that slide where it says hope in action. And I remember talking to Roxanne about this is interesting. This is the very title of a book of somebody that I so respect. Her name is Heather Fisk, Dr. Heather Fisk, who's a counseling psychologist who works with Canadian psychologists who works with especially youth, but also people in situations where they're considering suicide. And she has written a book called Hope in Action. So I was like, this is such a fitting title. And also, I noticed that subtitle that says, How Better Conversations to Thrive in Difficult Situations. And I study words as a communication scientist. So when I read something, I'm like, oh, that is so interesting. And there are always other meanings to it. So, for example, I just noticed the word thrive. I mean, what does thriving look like? I mean, we live in this world where we watch things on social media that you got to thrive. Even thriving is a task. You have to thrive, be more, do more. And when you look at the word thrive, it shares this beautiful root word with the words like thrift.
mm,
Like when somebody's being thrifty, like what does that mean? And it used to being thrift, like thrifty mean it used to mean that you're prosperous, but then somehow it changed this meaning to frugal.
mm,
But the root word of thrift as well as thrive, it means to hold on.
mm,
So when I look at subtitles of hope in action and better conversations to thrive, that means better conversations to hold on to something. What are we holding on? What are we
mm,
holding on in difficult situations? Because that's what the word thrive means. And even the word conversations here, in I think 14th century, early 14th century, the word conversation used to mean place where you dwell,
mm,
like your address, so to speak, right?
mm,
So when you are, some people say, well, it's turning together. Yes, that too. But conversation used to mean the place where you dwell. And I think it's metaphorically very true still.
mm,
So, where do you live? What are you holding on to? I mean, look at your physical space. Look around and what do you have on your desk? What do you have around? I have a very messy office actually, especially because I just returned from a teaching tour. So I'm looking around and there's this hat, there's this blanket on the floor. It's really messy. But when you look around, there are some things that you're holding on to. You know that it probably has no use, but you hold on to it
Mm,
because you have a reason to do so.
mm.
So that's what we're going to actually look at today. And do I believe that that can help? I think that probably is one of a few things left for us to hold on to, is to have better conversations.
So
Not to
interesting. Yeah.
sound so bleak.
No, not so bleak at all. I think there is hope, and I with that in mind, I think we want to discuss th three aspects of hope and how they connect to conversation. And the first is this idea that hope is pragmatic. It is a practical thing to have hope, and I'd love to hear what that means to you, Hasten.
Mm. So, for those who are joining and who may have background in linguistics, so when we say pragmatic, it's something that it does something. So, pragmatic is something about, so what does hope do? Many times we ask, what is hope? But what does it do is a question a pragmatics would ask. What does that do? And especially when we think about talking about hope, we often consider conversation as exchange of talks. Conversation, though, if you think about it, it's not just exchanging talks or talking turns. It's also about listening turns. And when we look at people in conversations, and we have cultural differences, of course, and in some cultures they overlap much more than other cultures. And some other cultures, the overlap, when they did the study of 10 different language groups, the overlap between people varied quite significantly. And about 4 seconds is when you start to feel quite uncomfortable if nobody's talking. Whereas in other countries, and Finland is one example, and many of the indigenous communities, actually up to 10 seconds was not at all uncomfortable.
Mhm.
In fact, if you're jumping in too soon, it's seen as thoughtless. Like, why are you talking again? So the way that we understand conversation is also culturally biased, and also how we perceive just based on how people talk, not just what they talk about. And that also is culturally informed as well. And this idea of listening shouldn't be so strange because that's how we learn to talk. Before you learn to talk, you have to hear the same word at least a few hundred times for you to be able to say it. For those of you who speak multiple languages, you first heard it so many times before you can even start to say something. I have a friend who tried to teach me Amharic, which is a language that people in Ethiopia speak, one of the languages that they speak. And Amharic has some expressions or articulations that English speakers cannot have, using your throat and things like that. And she had to repeat that several because I really wanted to learn how to say it. And then she had to first of all demonstrate, and I looked at it, I heard it, but I couldn't like produce it until I then practiced several times. So listening came way before talking, but then whenever we talk about hope or conversations, we talk about talk. So
Mm,
I want to position this conversation as what does talking do and what does listening do? And that is hope as pragmatic because I think many times people misunderstand when you hear words like hope. We say, you mean happy? Like you want to be happy? And that's one of the most misunderstood concept of hope, that people want to be happy. And again, going back to this amazing root words of stuff like happiness. And the first part of that word, hap, it's shared in many other English words. And so think about other words in English that has hap in it.
happenstance.
happenstance, right? Something happened. What
Mm,
happened? So we ask about that, or um, haphazard, or something like that.
mm,
So what does that mean, right? So what does that mean? It used to mean like a fortune,
mm,
something that occurs, like something that is bestowed upon you, like hap. So when you see words like happiness, it has a bit of a history that it's something that happens to you. It's not something that you choose. So I chuckle when people say choose happiness. I'm like, it's kind of like not it's not in the word,
Choose
because
to win the lottery. Why not?
right. So hap is something that happens, fortune, and hope is not
Mm,
happiness. So
mm,
then what is it? Like, what do we mean when you choose hope? And I want you to think about settings like hospitals.
mm,
Are people happy? Hmm. Are people hopeful? Eh, Many people would say that I am hopeful, but I don't think they will say, I am so happy to be here. And similar in families going through difficult times.
mm,
And that's the thing. So many times, some like I hear people saying, other families seem to be doing okay. I don't think when you really look around, every single family has their history and story that you may not know.
mm,
They may look happy,
mm,
but even my own family, am I happy? Sure, there are moments like that. Am I hopeful? Yeah, more hopeful than happy.
mm.
But constantly changing landscape, especially if you're around my age. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but my nephew tells me that you went to university in the late 1900s. Yes, I did. So, I mean, when you put it like that,
Those were the
so
days.
yeah, and then we are in that generation where now I have lost one parent, my father passed, and my mother is, reaching that age of a bit more needing help and so on. So you know what I'm talking about if you're, in that age group that we have our parents' generation that we need to sort of care. And then also we have kids underneath us, underneath I say, but they're probably ahead of us. And I have, nephews and children in my life that I caretake. And especially the one that is occupying my mind right now is he's 16, struggling at work. And I actually think to myself, I cannot believe you're struggling at like school. I mean, don't you love school? But then I think to myself, I hated high school too.
Mhm,
But what he told me when he was 15, that really woke me up was, Auntie, you don't know what kind of life I have.
mhm,
And I was like, are you kidding? I was 15 once. I mean, I know exactly. And then he said, well, I spent one third of my life in pandemic.
mhm,
Oh, and then he said, I also spent like almost one third of my life in war. Like, and he's American, so, but he lives here now. But he's like, I hear the news of my own country now waging wars, and who's right? I
mhm,
mean, is that a good thing? So he asked me a lot about, is that a good thing? Is this right? And now these are conversations that are not easy nor short. It's an ongoing thing. And he said, one third of my life. So it's so if you think about it, his life is completely different than what I experienced. So even in that, I talk about, so here's what happened, but also you have some choices that you can make.
mhm,
So those are some conversations that surround us. And how do we then find hope, right? So
mhm.
how do you do this, Malcolm, when you actually are, especially when you're very tired?
In the midst
And
of all of this madness, and
the
our daily lives
macro world and
continue, and
micro world.
exactly, we all have our own work to do, our own equivalent of a 16-year-old in high school. Some of us do
Yeah.
aging parents and young children and all of that, and finding hope in the midst of all that it feels like a big ask, honestly. So yeah, would love to hear how do we go about finding that hope?
Yeah, and then that's the question to all of us. I mean, I am very tired at the moment. I'm sure many of you who are joining is like, you didn't wake up in the morning and think, I can't wait to like see what today has to offer. If you did, good for you. I didn't wake up like that, right? And then many of us don't wake up like automatically programmed to be like thankful and hopeful. So how do you find it? And it's you don't have to create it, but you just need to find it, especially when you're very tired. For many different reasons. Maybe you're the caregiver for so many of your loved ones right now. Maybe you lost somebody, or maybe like I think about all your loved ones, like your pet. You know, people often don't understand how painful it is if something happens to your pet. And how do you find hope? Or do we have to? Do we have to find hope all the time? So it's one of those questions that I wanted to pose to you as a very realistic thing. It's not a strategy that you can actually say, fine, finally I know how to find hope. It's not going to work like that. Because when things seem really hopeless, I don't know how many of you are joining with that kind of sense. Like it's not like completely hopeless, but you are like, you know what? I'm going through a really personally difficult time if you think that, or something just happened to you or in your life. Some of you might have just lost a job. It's happening all around us actually because of the AI. Many people in telecommunications and other fields, they are now feeling the threat directly. And I think we saw the news not too long ago that big telecommunication company in Toronto, they were offering severance package to 50% of their workforce. Now, that is frightening. So when things seem hopeless, can we look again? So what do we mean by looking again? And there's this beautiful word when you look at some of the root words of looking again. So in English or in other like similar languages, again, when you have to do something again, like repeat, there's the what do you call it? The front part of the word that's repeat,
Prefix, yeah, the
you know?
prefix re.
So re. So we have that look. So the word look is like when you look something closely, or when we call it inspect. You inspect something. When you are looking inside, it's introspect. When you look back, it's retrospect. So, or the things that you wear, like glasses, it's also called spectacles. Or something is amazing, then you call it spectacular. So the word spect is to it means to look. So when you say look again, that's a practice of respect.
Mhm.
And that's the choice and discipline of are we willing to look again, especially when you feel like your aging parents have strong opinions and you're like, oh, they're not gonna change. Or if you have young children or especially teenagers and you feel like, oh my gosh, I know I gave birth to you. I remember my mom joking when I was growing up, I gave birth to you so I can also undo you. It's just a thread. But when I look at my own nephew, who I actually changed diapers for and all those things, and it's not easy for me to actually believe that this may be a person that I don't know yet,
Mhm.
because he's growing. He's going through a huge growth spurt, and also, so when I look at him, when you look at your own child, can you hold on to like holding on to this belief that they might be different person than yesterday?
Mhm.
Your aging parent, your spouse that you've been with for 15 years, 30 years, can we hold on to this idea that they might be a different person today than 5 years ago, even 6 months ago? And this choice of looking again, respecting, what does that look like?
Mhm. And if I could just add to that, because I think one of the big things that came up for me as I was reading your book, which again is getting blurred out by Zoom, but it's coaching A to Z, is also turning that lens on oneself, and maybe taking a different perspective spect again, on what your own achievements and makeup actually are, and not stopping maybe at the story which you've been repeatedly telling yourself about, how you're doing and what you've done to date and what you haven't done. And I think for me, that was one of the most mind-shifting aspects of your approach to these conversations with a coach, but also I think conversations with oneself.
And as you say, I love how you say perspective,
Mm,
right? And that idea of looking again, like re-looking at some of these inherited narratives that you grew up with,
mm,
some of those that you adopted. Carl Tom from Calgary, who's I think he's his background in social work. He would talk about how you are actually. It's not you become, but you are what other people said about you.
mm,
Stories that you have inherited. Like growing up, you've had some compliments and some things that people said about you in a teasing way or in a corrective or maybe even in a mean way. And you somehow inherited all those things. Now, what if we had a choice to look at them again and actually say, you know what, that does not actually serve me. So I will not take that on.
mm,
And it's time to say bye to that. But what if I actually picked out the ones that really gave me life? It's
mm.
funny, I'm holding on this cup and it's the organization, my organization, and on back of it we actually put some of our favorite Bible verses actually.
Ah,
And it's about hope. And I just noticed it because this happens to be my favorite verse, which is from Deuteronomy from chapter 30, 19 to 20. And this is about choosing life. Because there's a before you, there's a death, that blessings and life and curses. And it says now choose life. And I often think about this. How do we do this?
mm,
When we have so many options, but then how do we choose life?
mm,
Right? So it's the practice of look again, but how does it show up?
mm,
Because many times when I get clients, they want to get their way.
mm.
Like they somehow want something in their life, and we're like, okay, so this is what you want. But often, here's a very common way of assessments that we use at hospitals and workplaces, and it looks like this. So I don't know if you can see this. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. So here's something that we use even in airport like bathrooms. They say, "How was your service?" And then they have smiley face, frown face. It's a scale. It's a scaling as an idea. Now you want to get your way. And often we say, okay, so where are you today? And you will say something like, so here you are, 10 is you have your way. Like, finally, I reached my way. One is the sorry opposite of that. Nothing is going your way. Now, can I play with you, Malcolm?
Please.
And usually when we do coaching, it'll be like way more specific than this. But
Mm,
let's say 1 to 10 right now in general, like your life is sort of like, like 10 is mostly getting like, it's you're getting your ways. And one is like nothing
mm,
is
mm.
actually happening in that way. Where would you say you're at today?
Well, I mean, I get to do this talk, so that's like that's got to move the numbers up. I'm gonna put myself at a good solid 6.
Okay. It's so funny. Research shows that a lot of clients, majority of them, they say 6 or 7. Oh, if the kids heard this, they'll be like
Six,
6, 7. But
7.
anyway,
Yes. No, we don't have to mention that. It's fine.
so now let's say somebody says they're a 6. Now, for those of you who are listening in, I am so curious. Like when somebody says they're at a 6, what would you like to say next to this person? If you're sitting down and then they say, I'm at a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. And this is a question to all of you too, as you're, listening into this webinar. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you?
Mm,
And just do a little line and give yourself a number. Like where do you think you're at in life? Maybe you can be more specific about in your relationship, maybe in your financial goals, maybe in your spirituality. Physical. You can be in different aspects of your well-being, right? So where would you put yourself on that scale? And you answered it, the little X. Now, naturally, what do we look at?
I think we look at the numbers between 6 and 10. How can I get that number up?
I know, and that's one of the myths that is tiring us out. So, by definition, this distance between 6 and 10 is what you don't have yet. By definition, that is called deficit. You don't
Mm,
have it. Deficit. And what's interesting is people think focusing on the next little step to move you closer to 10 will motivate you and you will get there. That's the biggest myth that we have.
mm,
And the minute that you actually ask about, so how come you're at a 6, not 10? Now you're asking people to talk about,
mm,
um, well, what's getting in your way? Because clearly you're not at 10, you're only at 6. So when you ask about how come you're at a 6, it is actively asking what's getting in your way. Doesn't necessarily give you hope, does it? And it's so weird. I don't know how many of you actually have answered it this way, but there's this entire distance that we see right in front of us. By definition, the distance you have already traveled that you have, which is by definition asset, resource, strength. You've traveled, Malcolm, all the way to 6.
mm,
If I
mhm,
were to ask you, Malcolm, how would you get to a 7 versus how did you get up to a 6? Because situation is not easy, as you said, but
mhm.
somehow you managed to be at a 6. How did you get there?
It's a very different answer, obviously. I think, the again, I'm a little spoiled by having read your book, but I think this was one of the huge takeaways for me is just that even if I was at a 2, um, that is an impressive achievement. You lived to the point where you're not at 0. You have achieved
Mm.
something. You have done some work that has gotten you further than the bottom. And I think for all of
Mhm.
us, even in our bleakest moments, there is always something to take pride in, to be happy about, and to look at as this is something that shows how capable I am of actually moving this dial. And I've already done it, which feels so good. It feels so bad to be in the deficit of, oh God, I have to move it another number up. Oh, but I'm so tired. I think for me, back to the idea of hope, I feel very hopeful when I focus on what I have achieved to date as opposed to what I have not done yet.
And that's the part of finding. It's the finding hope in the steps that you have already taken. And I know some of you might have actually said, I'm at the rock bottom 1. Some of you who say, I'm at a 1, I don't want to be like, so like, I don't want to be toxic positive and say, hey, let's move on and look at the bright side. It's not about that. Some of you, and I do have some days I feel like I am at a 1. I got up at 1, right? And then it's a little shift about if you said you're at a 1 in some aspects of your life, you might be amazing financially, but then you're relational, you're at a 1. Now, then the question isn't about how do we move it up, but as Malcolm, as you're saying, the focus is it sounds really difficult for you to say that you're at a 1 or even 2. And now, how are you coping? You may feel like you are not even coping, but somehow for you to actually take this time to give yourself that number, and you have this minute to look at it, and how, in what ways are you coping in that situation? What little things do you find at least that keeps you going? So those are some of the prompts that I would use with my clients because it's not about what gets in your way, but it's truly about getting people to look at how are you already getting on your way? Because sure, we can ask about what's getting in your way, but then you already know it. I don't even have to ask for it. What you don't usually look at is how are you already getting on your way? You see, that was like not even a word of a difference. It's a one letter of a difference. So many times you wake up in the morning, oh, I'm getting in this way, and somebody's like talking to you, maybe school calls you, work is giving you something more to do, and you always see it as, oh, now this again, now it's getting in my way. Or in what ways are you already on your way? This is a huge shift. It's the small difference that makes the difference, as Bateson would say. And in what ways then can we practice this? So, how do we practice something like this? Because hope is not a thing that we can obtain, it's a continuous acting, continuous construction of it that is being constructed as we speak, truly. Like, I love abracadabra because it literally means um, it becomes it as we speak.
Ah,
Right? So it's like, how does it become a thing as we speak? And also, there's a part in the book where I speak about this idea. I just did a keynote on with this title, spell check, and it was for a bank, like it's Bank of Montreal, and they're like, "What is this title?" And it was called spell check. And spell check is similar to this talk. It's about we need to check what kind of spells that we're under.
mm, mm,
Spell, it means to tell or to story, to tell a story. And many of us live under a spell of what other people have said about us. So let's do a bit of spell check. And how do we, like, first of all, what are some things that you think about who you are? Like, how would you describe yourself? And there are many adjectives that you might choose. Like, you don't have to tell me, but write down all the adjectives that you would say. And then also you can trace every single adjective to, oh yeah, somebody said that to me. Oh yeah, this person said that to me. Oh yeah, this happened for me to think that. And there are, maybe you picked up on some of those words from social media these days,
mm,
right? Because then my nephew struggled with this idea of not liking this person who happened to be a certain race, but he thought, I'm a racist because he picked it
mm,
up from social media. I said, no, no, you actually not liking this person. You don't like them not because of their race, but because of their action.
mm,
But if you then conclude that because of their race they're doing this, then sure, that's getting closer to racist. But let's just look at it a little bit more closely. So when you do that exercise of just writing down 20 adjectives that you have currently for yourself, and then looking at where does it come from? And also, how do you describe your work?
mm,
I'm just a cashier. I am just this. Or are there other ways of looking at it? And that is one of the practices that we do in a coaching course to really look at your own stories and how who actually cast a spell on you. And can we do some spell check? Because how do you spell hope is one of the chapters that we talk about. I think it's actually the hope chapter, isn't it? How do you spell hope?
It is.
So here's a little, I don't know if this is useful, but I wanted to show you this little script as a practice. This is a 45-second script, and I'm going to read it to you. And your task is very simple. After you hear this, I know some of you might be driving, so if you cannot read it, please don't read the screen if you're driving. But I'm going to read it to you and immediately think about what might be your immediate response to somebody who says this. Okay. So the person says, oh, sorry, I had this whole thing I was going to say in the car, but yeah, but now it's just gone. I mean, it's been a lot. I'm up at 5 and I'm the last one to bed. And somewhere in the middle of it, I'm supposed to be a person too. I keep thinking it will ease up after this month and then it's the next month, right? So what if it doesn't though? What if this is it? Like this is just it. And there was a version of me that was actually fun to be around and I don't even know where that went. And I think I just want to feel like myself again. But anyway, like saying this out loud, it kind of helps. 45 seconds. And this is so like ordinary that people say something like this. And then what is your ordinary response? Like people say something and then you say something back. And I know your intention is to be useful. Your intention is to help somehow. Your intention is to be empathetic. And you do your best to do so. And what do you say? And there are many options, isn't there? And some of you, there are some words that really pop out. It's like, ooh, you know, it's been a lot. Or you're like, what do you mean? Like, and in the middle of it, I'm supposed to be a person. And some of you are thinking, oh my gosh, me too. Did you read my journal? You know, like this is me. For those of you with small children or school-age children or people that you have to take care of up at 5 and you're the last one to bed, this is not new to you, is it? In the middle of it, you have this thing called work. And somewhere in there, now I'm told to be hopeful. Now I'm told to do more and be better. All of this. Now, what do you say in response? Is what is going to shape either the hope or not for the other person. So here's a little framework that I developed as I was doing research, and my research includes looking at conversations, thousands of hours of it. And when you look at a few hundreds of it, you start to notice something. And what we notice is this: people usually tell you something. So when they come to you, they usually tell you something that happened in the past. They're like, this is what happened. I cannot write using my mouse. And then they also tell you something that might happen in the future. So there's a timeline in your narrative. In this 45-second narrative, there is a timeline. They say something that happened, and they say something might happen in the future. And right in the middle is what we define as the now. The now is defined as the time and space that we share right now. So anything that has been happening up to you and I talking is the past. Anything that will happen after our talk will be the future. That's a timeline. Another dimension is, and I cannot even do straight line up and down. This is
You're
supposed to be a
doing
straight
great.
line, not a curvy line, okay? And here's a continuum of what we call preference. So preference line is when somebody tells you something that they prefer to see, or let me say they want more. Wow, I do my writing is much better than this, trust me. And then something that they want less on the bottom. So for those of you who don't see the screen, I have this two lines intersecting in the middle. The horizontal line is from past to future, left to right, which is a timeline in somebody's narrative. The vertical line that's intersecting in the middle of the timeline is called preference. On the top, we have something people say that they want. And on the bottom, something that people say in their narrative that they don't want. Okay. Now then, starting from the upper right corner in a proper mathematics way, I'm tutoring my nephew's grade 11 math. It's crazy. I don't even know what's going on, but I know that this is how you number a quadrant. So upper right corner is quadrant one, which is where people talk about something that they want in the future. Quadrant two, upper left, because we go counterclockwise, is something that people say that happened in their past that was nice, that was nice, or that was really resourceful and that really enjoyed it, maybe interactions, thoughts, feelings that were like, yeah, that was nice. Now, number three is the lower left, which is people tell you something that happened in their past that was not their preference. I wish that didn't happen, type of stuff. I wish I didn't do that. I wish they didn't do that. And there are a lot of stuff living in that quadrant there, right? And then number four is something that people say that might happen in the future that they are so not looking forward to. So now that's the quadrant. And let me actually show you a proper like rendering of this. I think that's coming up here. Let me see if I can do this. There you go. Thank goodness that there is a proper like straight line. Thank you, Malcolm. This is so useful.
Cool.
And the name of it, please don't worry about the name. It's called dialogical orientation quadrant. Don't worry about it. I just had to come up with a really sophisticated, impressive name because this is a simple model. So, you somehow need to compensate, right? So it's dialogic in nature. It's not diagnostic, it's dialogic. Its function is to orient your focus. So it's in a dialogue, we orient your attention to one of or more of these quadrants. And as we looked at it, where is the quadrant one? It's just a little quiz for you. Where's the quadrant one on this thing? It's the upper right, isn't it? And it's actually called the preferred futures. Um, some people call it perfect future, but again, that risks being toxic positive. So we call it just preferred future. I wish that it would turn out to be like this. And you could also say it's futures, plural, because there are multiple sort of, I believe in multiverse. So multiple
Everything everywhere else.
possibilities, you know?
Mhm.
And also quadrant two. What would you name it? Things that happened in your past that you really enjoyed and you found like to be your resource. And obviously it's called the resourceful past. And quadrant three is things that happen in their past that you're like, I just wish I didn't, or I wish that you didn't. And it includes regrets. And it was so funny. A few years ago, I was presenting this at a Canadian Positive Psychology Association, and one participant came up to me afterwards, because I used to call this quadrant regretful past. And that participant came up to me, and he happened to be a priest. I didn't know that until much later, but he said, I think I knew that because he said, there are a lot of other things in our past, not only our regrets.
Mm.
And he introduced himself as a priest, and I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. And I was hoping, I was thinking, like anticipating that he will say, there's also that grace. I was like, yes. And in my anticipation, I was like, yes, there's more than regrets in our past. And he said, also there's guilt and shame. I'm like,
Spoken like a
come
true
on.
priest. That's great.
Like, come on, we gotta do better than this. And like,
He
like,
understands the assignment. It's bottom left, you know?
come
Grace
on.
Grace lives in the resourceful past.
And he wasn't joking. He said, well, as a priest, I also need to talk about the guilt and shame and regrets. And I said, okay, that's great. And also there's other things too. But anyway, I realized that sometimes regret is not enough. So then we just call it the trouble past.
Mm.
Also, I think there's another edition that's published that says traumatic past.
Mm.
But then when I was working with some banks, they said we don't have trauma. So I told them you need to go see a psychologist for delusion. But anyway, so the name is the trouble past. And then the last one is something that people will tell you that they're thinking that might happen that they're not looking forward to.
Mm.
And that's where many of us wake up in this field. It's called fear, the anxiety, the worry. If you have pets or family or something that or you yourself are aging, and then now you have this sense of fear and anxiety, the worry, right? And then now what? What do we call it? So we call it the dreaded future. And it could be small d or big D. And this is how we map conversations. So then I'm going to go back to the thing that I showed you, but let me do a little test to make sure that you got this. So what's the time? What's the left to right timeline? What's on the left side? Come on, Malcolm, you can do this. On the left,
That is the past,
thank you. And then on
not
the right,
the future.
and then intersecting vertical line, which is not so vertical here, but
At
anyway,
the
on
top is what you want more of
what you want more of. I'm gonna do an increase arrow
and what you
and then
want less
less
of at the
of.
bottom.
Now, the quadrant one is called,
The preferred future.
thank you.
This is a great
Malcolm,
test
thank
for
you for
me.
doing this. And quadrant two, it's all of you actually watching because I don't know, I don't see your faces. It's one of the
Right.
things with webinar, right? I don't see anybody. That's no fun.
Quadrant two is the resourceful past, so positive memories for you,
Yeah, and then things that worked. That's
things that
it,
worked.
right?
And then quadrant three is the troubled past, so things that felt not as good, and all the shame that your priest friend told you about. And then the dreaded future.
Yeah, and the research shows that in fact humans are probably almost every single human beings that are existing at the moment shares a DNA of fear
Mm,
because that's how we survived.
mm,
Being one of the weakest species living on this earth, we had to be careful so that you can survive. So somehow this ancestors of us who were so careful, who were so fearful, they survived. They
mm, mm,
probably stayed in the cave instead of like going out in the storm. Because they worried. So I think we share that. So what happens is humans, naturally, we live in quadrant three and four.
mm.
And that served us really well because we looked at other people's mistakes and we're like, oh, yeah, you shouldn't do that because he died
He got
doing
eaten
that.
by a
So
tiger. There were so many
lessons
tigers.
learned. Do not pet the tiger. So we learn from our mistakes and their mistakes. And yeah, you shouldn't really drink that because she died, right? So then number four is also what might happen. What if this happened? What if that happens? So like people like Barbara Fredrickson or Losada or all these people who have done this research, like narrative analysis research, they will tell you that we have a ratio of some people call it, well, Losada called it negativity ratio. Barbara Fredrickson called it positivity ratio, and it's really about the ratio of every like one sort of positive things people think and say. We have minimum three times more likely content in quadrant three or four.
Mm,
So this is our natural sort of disposition. So when you wake up in the morning, as your eyes are opening, the first few thoughts, if you have four thoughts, let's say, three of them are in the bottom quadrants. Maybe you have one thing that is exciting, sure, but you have three times more likely. If you have
mm,
two good thoughts, expect six bad thoughts, for example. I don't want to call it good or bad because those are all useful, like thoughts. But in a way, we get up in the morning and the way that we think about our thoughts, the meta cognition is if you think worrying is bad, anxiety is bad, that you have to somehow take medication for. I mean, some cases you do, I guess, but then if you consider them, if you perceive them as a bad thing, then it probably will become bad for you.
mm,
But I often think about, I mean, I have this sheer terror of something happening to my mom or my dogs and my nephews and so on. And I think I see that as an expression of care, love, that I cannot lose this. I cherish it so much. Like, think about all your fears. It's probably connected to something that you cherish.
mm.
You fear of public shame. Great, because you care so much about dignity.
Yeah, your
You
status.
right? And it's
Mhm,
status or dignity or whatever word that you actually feel resonating with. And you fear like something because that fear is losing something that you cherish.
mm,
So the fact that we don't call it good or bad, that's a huge step because it's not positive thinking. It is really about finding like what is it, even in the midst of quadrant three and four, troubled past and dreadful future. Like, what is it that you can gauge from somebody's fear? What is it that we deem important? Important enough for us to be dreadful. So now, when you look at this particular script, it's all there.
mm,
And I just highlighted this so that you can see it. And I mean, I can do way more microanalysis, but this is a little bit more macro level. So when somebody says it's been a lot, which quadrant is this? Is that
That's the
something that, yeah,
that's the troubled past, I believe.
yeah, because we can say probably it's not something that they want.
Mm,
It's been happening so far, so it's been a lot. So we're gonna actually put that as this is quadrant three content. So we're going to put quadrant three here. I'm up at 5. I'm last one to bed. Possibly this is not what they want either,
mm,
but they've been doing this. So we can also put 3. And this is how we analyze conversations. But imagine doing this real time
mm,
because now we are way more attuned to quadrant 3 and 4 content when somebody tells us this.
mm,
So my guess is that many of you picked up on it's been a lot, so what's been happening? Tell me more, right? And then, oh, so how are you feeling? You feeling tired. So we kind of do that. But here's the thing, whatever we pay attention to will grow. So
mm,
what do you want to grow? Which quadrant do you want to grow? Which quadrant do you want kids to grow? Which quadrant do you want your marriage to grow together? And when you look at this, and if that's what you want to grow, do you want to grow fear? Do you want to grow regret? Do you want to grow hope? But then in our own practice, is that what we actually do? What are you paying attention to will grow? Then where is this content for quadrant one or two? Right? So now this person says, I keep thinking it will ease up after this month. There's a slight idea of hope, but then it gets squashed again. Then it's the next month again. So man, that didn't work, did it?
mm.
And the person said, what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't ease up though? You hear the dread.
Dreaded
And
future.
some people will, yeah, and people will say, so yeah, what if it doesn't? Then what are you going to do about it? So we want to get to problem solving, which doesn't really help. And what if this is just it? As you watch the news, you might think that too. As it's a Canadian, I get livid when I see some things on the news. I'm like, excuse me, what? And I feel almost hopeless, like maybe this is it. Like
Mm,
when you look at AI, you're like, what? Maybe this is it. Think about AI and the things that you fear that we might lose because there's something that you cherish so much.
mm. And just to this is fantastic. I see that we've got
Mhm.
a couple of questions in the chat. Hey, soon we've got a few minutes left, and I think they're a
Yeah.
very logical sort of following on from this. So it looks like John and Michael both essentially asked if we tend to be weighted towards quadrant three and four, and good Lord, I am. What are some practical ways that we can shift our thinking and move into quadrants one and two as we are having these conversations?
Now it's shifting your thinking too, but shifting your listening, and that's really what we are doing here because
Mm,
here the person also said all these things three and four, but then person says there was a version of me that was actually fun to be around. There's a
mm,
little hint to their quadrant too.
mm,
And as a pattern, they usually say, but it's not there anymore. Usually we speak in contrast like this.
mm,
It was there, but not anymore. So then they lost it somehow. And then I think I just want to feel like myself again. You hear, this is what they actually say that they want. This is quadrant one. Now, when you look at this content, and if you want to, so where do you want this person to be after they talk to you? I hope that you say one or two. Like,
of
if you
course.
say, I want them to be more dreadful, I mean, you need to see a psychologist, okay?
Depends on the person, but yeah, let's
Depends on the
assume that we
person.
like them.
That's so true. So let's say if you want them to be well, we are talking about hope. So you want them to be more hopeful. Where do you find hope? Not only in the future, but mostly also in the past, especially when somebody's going through
Mm,
grief. Please don't invade their space with, so what do you now need to do? That is
mm,
invasive. It's actually violent. So then you asking about, so how have you been coping? What are some of your favorite memories with a person? Like exploring their quadrant two will do so much heavy lifting for you.
mm,
So for here, you could have options. Yes, you can ask about what's been happening. It's been a lot. And what do you need to do to find your work-life balance? Because you're up at 5 and last one to bed. You can do all of that. Sure, that's an option. But a little bit better conversational option will be maybe asking them about, wow, so tell me about that version of you.
mm,
Who are you with? What were you doing? And how did you actually what was it like? But then the person says, but I don't know, it went somewhere. So you can play with it and say, so, suppose it comes back. Who might be the first one to notice that you're
mm,
back?
mm.
Or when, because the person says, I just want to feel like myself again. And how does it show up? How would you
Mm,
know tomorrow as you wake up in the morning? Somehow suppose that yourself started to come back.
mm. What would you
And
see? What would that be like?
yeah, and what would you notice? How would you know that the person is slightly starting to come back? And who would be the first to notice? What would they notice?
Mm,
Now, this is a completely different way of listening with the same thing that they say, because always the gap between what people say and what you hear. And listening here is a choice that you make that
I
is
love
leading a little bit closer to co-constructing or co-authoring hope for yourself and others.
that is
So
a
hopefully this
very
was
hopeful,
useful.
hopeful ending to the conversation. Thank you so much, Jesus. I know Roxanne has to jump back in and do some housekeeping. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been a fantastic, fantastic conversation. I learned a lot. I hope you all did as well. And let's throw it back to Roxanne.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you everyone who was able to join today. As I mentioned, I'm going to throw the link to the video, um, information about our June session, which is on creating spaces for healthy masculinity. I'm really excited about that conversation. I hope that you'll be able to join. That's with folks from a Catholic high school in Buffalo, talking about some amazing work that they're doing with the boys in their school with them. And Jonathan Reed from Next Gen Men, which is a group that is focused on giving boys and men great spaces to grow up into great people. And I'm also going to throw in a survey. We'd love to hear your feedback. And please follow Hope in Action, uoft.me/hope in action, um, and join our mailing list. And you'll always be the first person to find out when we're doing something new. But thank you again to Haesun and to Malcolm. It was really great spending this hour with you both. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of this beautiful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks, Malcolm. That
everybody.
was
Everybody.
fun.
That was
It's
great.
a lot of fun.
Bye.